Imagine an ordinary person. Let's call her Anna. She spent years of her life chasing material goals, success at work, social recognition, financial stability. But at some point, all of this began to lose meaning. The constant stress at work, the disconnection from her own essence, and a deep feeling of emptiness began to grow inside her. Then a personal crisis arose, forcing her to stop. In the silence of the crisis, Anna found something unexpected: her higher self. She began to realize that all of her external achievements did not fill the space her true self longed to occupy. This higher self, quiet and subtle, started to guide her, showing that the true path to fulfillment was not in external achievements but in a process of self-discovery and inner connection. Often, the higher self reveals itself in the most difficult moments. Like a lighthouse in the middle of a storm, it lights the way when we are lost, but only if we are willing to listen to its soft voice, often drowned out by the noise of the external world. It is in these moments of transformation, when we question our choices and face the unknown, that we find the opportunity to connect with a deeper, wiser part of ourselves. Anna discovered that the path to her higher self was not a linear road but a journey full of twists, uncertainties, and challenges that ultimately led her to a more authentic and fulfilling life. There are many ways to quiet the mind and access this inner voice we call the higher self. One of the most powerful is intuitive writing. Imagine yourself sitting in a quiet place, with an open notebook and a pen in hand. Instead of planning what to write, you simply let the words flow. Without judgment, without expectations, just allowing what's inside you to surface. This process can bring unexpected and profound answers because, in essence, you are giving space for the higher self to express itself without the barriers of rational thought. Another effective practice is meditative dance. When we move freely, without choreography, without worrying about what looks right or wrong, we create a channel for our higher self to manifest through the body. The mind is often limited in its understanding, but the body has its own wisdom. Dancing without thinking can be a way to free ourselves and connect with this higher energy that resides within each of us. In addition to these practices, we can explore conscious art. Painting, drawing, or creating any form of art without the intention of pleasing or achieving a specific goal but simply as a form of expression can be profoundly transformative. When immersed in creative activities, we enter a state of flow, where time seems to disappear and our mind calms, allowing our higher self to guide our hands and create something that reflects our inner essence. We cannot forget the power of reconnecting with nature. Walking consciously in a forest, feeling the earth beneath your feet and listening to the sound of leaves in the wind helps us slow down and open space for introspection. Practices like forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku in Japan, are examples of how simply being in touch with nature can calm the mind and reconnect us with our spiritual essence. In the stillness of nature, the higher self finds a conducive environment to emerge. One of the biggest barriers on the path to the higher self is our reluctance to accept the lower self, that is, our ego. The ego is that part of us that seeks control, recognition, and security. It protects us but also limits us. Philosopher Carl Jung was one of the first to explore the idea that true spiritual growth is only possible when we accept all parts of ourselves, including those we consider less desirable. Accepting the ego or lower self is essential because the higher self rejects nothing. It integrates everything. In Eastern philosophies such as Taoism, this duality is central. The yin-yang symbol represents this harmony between light and shadow, between the ego and the higher self. To advance spiritually, we cannot deny our weaknesses, fears, and vulnerabilities. We need to face them head-on and embrace them as part of our wholeness. Vulnerability is, in fact, a gateway to the higher self. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open space for inner truth. It is only by facing fears, insecurities, and failures that we can free ourselves from them. Brené Brown, a researcher on vulnerability, reminds us that the courage to be vulnerable is what allows us to grow and connect genuinely with others and with ourselves. By embracing vulnerability, we begin to dissolve the ego's defenses and move closer to our higher self. This is a process that requires compassion and patience with oneself. It is not about rejecting the ego but learning to put it in its proper place, as an ally, not the guide of our lives. When we manage to accept this duality within us, we become more whole, and the path to the higher self becomes clearer. The higher self has a clear function in our journey, to guide us towards our life purpose. This purpose is not only related to personal or professional goals but to what gives meaning to our existence. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote extensively about the search for meaning as the driving force of human life. For him, even in the most adverse conditions, it is the meaning we find in life that sustains us. The higher self is that part of us that knows this meaning, even when we are temporarily disconnected from it. The philosopher Aristotle also believed that every human being has a telos, a final purpose. According to him, what truly fulfills us is living according to our deepest essence, which he called eudaimonia, a state of full happiness and self-realization that is only achieved when we live in harmony with our purpose. The higher self acts as a guide on this journey, leading us to make decisions and follow paths that bring us closer to this true fulfillment. Connecting with life purpose is not just an individual endeavor but also has a collective impact. When we live aligned with our higher self, our actions naturally begin to reflect a service to others. We feel the desire to contribute to the common good, to improve the world around us. In Hinduism, this idea is linked to the concept of dharma, which represents the role each being plays in the cosmic order. When we are in harmony with the higher self, our unique gifts and talents are used not only for our benefit but for the good of all. In short, the higher self guides us beyond superficial desires and puts us on a path of genuine purpose, aligning with our individual mission and the greater good of humanity. On the path to the higher self, we encounter many obstacles, and one of the most common is the fear of change. Change means letting go of old ways of being and thinking, which is often uncomfortable. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus reminds us, it is not events that disturb us but how we interpret them. This fear is not caused by external circumstances but by internal resistances. The mind often tries to keep us in our comfort zone, fearing the unknown, but the higher self asks us to have the courage to move forward. Another common obstacle is self-sabotage. The conditioned mind, the ego, fears losing control and tries to keep us trapped in repetitive patterns, blocking our growth. It's as if a part of us resists our own evolution, preferring the comfort of the known, even if it means stagnation. Here, the role of the higher self is crucial, as it constantly reminds us that behind the challenges lies growth waiting. Stoic philosophy also offers an important key to overcoming these obstacles: the practice of seeing challenges as opportunities for growth. According to Seneca, every difficulty on the path is a chance to practice virtues like patience, courage, and resilience. What seems like an obstacle is actually part of the path to the higher self. Overcoming these challenges is essential for our spiritual evolution, as it is in confronting them that true transformation occurs. Understanding that obstacles are part of the process allows us to face them differently. Instead of becoming discouraged by difficulties, we can see them as stepping stones to getting closer to who we truly are. Maintaining a daily connection with the higher self doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, it is in the small daily actions that this connection can be strengthened. One of the simplest ways to cultivate this presence is through mindfulness practice. Imagine yourself cooking a meal, but this time with full attention to every step, from choosing the ingredients to the aroma that fills the kitchen. When we bring our complete attention to the present moment, every action becomes an act of meditation, and in that state, the higher self has space to manifest. Simple activities like walking can also be transformed into reconnection practices. By walking mindfully, paying attention to the feeling of your feet touching the ground, the rhythm of your breath, and the environment around you, you are practicing presence. It is in this state of presence that we can hear the inner voice more clearly because the mind quiets, and the higher self can emerge. Another powerful little ritual is the practice of daily gratitude. At the end of each day, taking a few minutes to reflect on what we are grateful for helps shift the focus from what is lacking to what we already have. Gratitude not only elevates our energetic vibration but also aligns us with the broader, wiser perspective of the higher self. Moments of silence are equally essential. Amid the rush of everyday life, finding spaces to breathe consciously or simply be silent can be profoundly transformative. These moments of pause remind us that the higher self is always present, just waiting for us to quiet the external noise so we can hear it. Small rituals like these, incorporated into daily life, allow the connection with the higher self to become constant, transforming even the simplest tasks into opportunities for spiritual growth. Although spirituality is inherently an inner pursuit, modern technologies can play a valuable role as supportive tools in this process. Meditation apps such as Headspace or Insight Timer offer guided meditations that help calm the mind and cultivate the habit of being present. Technology can be an ally at the beginning of the journey when quieting the mind may seem challenging. By using these resources, we can create routines that allow us to dive deeper into spiritual practice. Another powerful tool is sound frequencies, such as solfeggio frequencies, which many believe have healing properties and help tune the body and mind to higher levels of vibration. These frequencies can be used during meditation or even as background music while performing everyday tasks, creating an environment conducive to connecting with the higher self. Additionally, meditative music, with its soft and harmonic sounds, has the power to transport us to deeper states of introspection. Calm melodies can help slow down the mental pace, allowing us to connect with deeper aspects of our consciousness. However, it is important to remember that these technologies and tools do not replace spiritual practice itself. They are complementary, a bridge that helps us enter the necessary state of consciousness for self-knowledge, but they should not be seen as the end of the journey. The true connection with the higher self happens in inner stillness, and these tools simply help facilitate access to that stillness. The connection with the higher self is not only mental or spiritual but also physical. The body is a temple that houses the soul, and taking care of it is essential to maintaining harmony between body, mind, and spirit. Ancient philosophies like Ayurveda and Taoism recognize this interconnection, emphasizing that physical balance directly reflects our spiritual health. A practice that exemplifies this integration is yoga, which goes far beyond a simple physical activity. Through postures, asanas, controlled breathing, pranayama, and meditation, yoga promotes a deep connection between the body and the higher self, balancing internal energies and calming the mind. By practicing yoga, we become more aware of the body, allowing physical and mental tensions to dissolve, paving the way for spiritual insights. Another practice that combines physical movement and spirituality is Tai Chi, a gentle martial art that, when performed with focus and presence, promotes harmony between the body and the internal energy flow, or Qi. Slow and mindful movements not only strengthen the body but also align our vital energy, facilitating connection with the higher self. Conscious eating also plays a fundamental role. In Ayurveda, for example, each food is considered a source of energy that can either balance or destabilize the body and mind. By eating mindfully, choosing foods that nourish both body and mind, we honor our being on all levels. Practicing mindful eating, where each meal becomes a ritual of gratitude and care, is a way to support the spiritual journey, keeping the body as a healthy vehicle for the higher self to express itself. Therefore, taking care of the physical body is not a matter of vanity but of respect and preparation so that we can access deeper levels of our spiritual consciousness. The spiritual journey is not about eliminating the ego but learning to integrate it healthily with the higher self. In Buddhism, the concept of the middle way teaches us that balance is the key to inner harmony. The higher self and the ego, rather than being opposing forces, can coexist as long as the ego is not the primary guide of our decisions. The ego is often seen as a problematic part of our psyche, the one that seeks recognition, validation, and control. However, the ego has its role. It helps us deal with the material world, build identity, and set boundaries. The problem arises when the ego takes complete control, overshadowing the wisdom and purpose that the higher self tries to reveal to us. This is where integration becomes necessary. Carl Jung, in his studies of the human psyche, asserted that individuation, or the process of becoming a complete being, occurs when we can integrate all parts of ourselves, both light and shadow. This means accepting the ego not as an enemy, but as a part of who we are, while allowing the higher self to guide us towards choices more aligned with our true purpose. The integration between the ego and the higher self allows for a more balanced and authentic life. When the ego is in balance, it serves as a collaborator, helping to manifest the visions of the higher self in the material world. By finding this balance, we live more harmoniously, with greater clarity of purpose, and become capable of navigating the world with authenticity, without being governed by selfish needs. This balance is the key to living fully, connected to our deepest essence, while still navigating the physical world with purpose and integrity. When we connect with the higher self, our interpersonal relationships transform significantly. Authenticity and depth emerge as central elements of our relationships. This happens because, when living according to the higher self, we become more aware of ourselves and the emotional and spiritual needs of those around us. The higher self teaches us to practice unconditional love, also known as agape love. This type of love transcends the limitations of the ego and is not based on expectations or exchanges. It is a reflection of what we are in our essence, beings connected to a greater force whose true nature is love. When we act from the higher self, our interactions become more compassionate and empathetic, allowing us to see others not through the filter of the ego but with the eyes of the soul. Moreover, this connection with the higher self helps us establish healthy boundaries in relationships. This does not mean isolation but the ability to recognize our own needs and respect those of others. The balance between self-love and love for others strengthens, and our relationships cease to be shaped by emotional dependency or lack. When we relate from the higher self, differences that could previously cause friction are met with acceptance and respect. We see others as mirrors reflecting aspects of ourselves, and instead of seeking to change the other, we use these interactions as opportunities for mutual growth. Deeper, more authentic, and respectful relationships become a reflection of this spiritual journey. Detachment is one of the fundamental pillars on the path to the higher self. In spiritual traditions such as Buddhism and Stoicism, detachment is seen as the key to inner freedom. Buddhism teaches us that suffering arises from attachment to people, things, and even ideas. Stoicism, in turn, invites us to accept what we cannot control and focus only on our reactions because true power resides within us. Both teachings point in the same direction. The path to inner peace lies in the ability to let go. Detaching does not mean isolating yourself or abandoning responsibilities but rather freeing yourself from expectations and the desire for control. The higher self understands that life is impermanent and fluid. When we detach, we allow things, people, and situations to come and go without resistance. This state of acceptance aligns us with the nature of the universe, creating space for new experiences and learnings to enter our lives. Another fundamental aspect of the spiritual journey is selfless service. In Hinduism, the concept of karma yoga, the path of selfless service, shows us how serving others is an expression of the higher self. When we serve others without expecting anything in return, we are, in fact, serving ourselves on a deeper level. This happens because the higher self recognizes the unity between all beings. The act of serving not only helps us connect with this unity but also dissolves the ego, which feeds on individualism. Therefore, detachment and service go hand in hand on the spiritual journey. By detaching from the needs of the ego and serving others with an open heart, we get closer and closer to the essence of the higher self, living more fully, freely, and connected to the whole. The path to the higher self is a continuous journey of self-knowledge, detachment, and connection with something greater than ourselves. As Socrates once said, "Know thyself." This simple yet profound phrase reminds us that the search for truth begins and ends within us. Listening to the inner voice, trusting the wisdom that comes from our higher self, and following the purpose it reveals to us are essential steps to living a full and meaningful life. Throughout this journey, we face challenges, learn to accept our vulnerability, and discover that the balance between the ego and the higher self leads to true fulfillment. Every practice, every ritual, and every moment of silence is an invitation to deepen this connection, making it an integral part of who we are. Now, the invitation extends to you. How can you apply these ideas to your life? What can you do starting today to cultivate this connection with your higher self? Perhaps it's through small daily practices of presence, gratitude, or service to others. Regardless of the path you choose, remember that the higher self will always be there, waiting to guide your steps with wisdom and love. If you enjoyed this content and want to keep following more reflections and tips on self-knowledge and spirituality, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way you'll stay up to date with all the news and help us spread this message to more people. Connect with your higher self and come walk this journey with us.